Millionaire stunned to see a construction worker who looks identical to his long-lost daughter. Richard Coleman was reviewing reports for his construction company's most important project when something made him freeze completely. A strange sensation came over him, as if the world had stopped for a few seconds. There, carrying bags of cement with impressive strength for someone so young, was a worker who left him breathless. It wasn't just the physical resemblance that unsettled him, but every gesture, every movement of hers felt familiar in a way that hurt his heart. "My God," Richard murmured, letting the papers fall from his hands. The young woman had the same expressive brown eyes, the same face shape. Even the way she tied her dark hair into a high ponytail was identical. It was like seeing a ghost from the past, an older version of the 8-year-old girl he had lost 15 years ago. Richard felt his legs weaken. The memory of that devastating divorce still haunted him every night. Catherine, his ex-wife, had simply vanished with Emily, their only daughter, leaving only a cold letter saying she would never see him again. Since then, he had hired detectives, searched the entire country, spent a fortune on investigations that always led to dead ends. The worker noticed her boss's intense stare and grew uncomfortable. She lowered her head and tried to move away, carrying another bag of cement to the other side of the site. But Richard couldn't take his eyes off her. Every step she took deepened his certainty that this wasn't just a passing resemblance. "Wait," Richard called, quickly walking toward her. The young woman turned, clearly uneasy about the attention she was getting. Her co-workers also began noticing the situation and whispered among themselves. "Do you need something, sir?" she asked, in a voice that made Richard's heart race. It was Emily's voice, just more mature. "What's your name?" Richard asked, trying to control the emotion in his voice. "Natalie," she replied curtly. "Natalie Wilson." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. Wilson wasn't his daughter's last name, but that meant nothing. Catherine could have changed everything, even the girl's name. "How old are you, Natalie?" 23, she answered, frowning. Why all these questions? The math added up perfectly. Emily would be exactly 23 now. Richard felt his hands trembling. "Where were you born?" Natalie took a step back, clearly uncomfortable with the questioning. "Look, sir, I just want to work in peace. If I did something wrong, let me know and I'll fix it. But these personal questions aren't your business." "Please," Richard insisted, his voice sounding more desperate than he intended. "It's important. Where did you grow up?" "Right here, in upstate New York," Natalie replied, crossing her arms. "I was raised by my grandmother in Hope Heights. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." Richard watched Natalie walk away, his heart pounding unevenly. Hope Heights was a modest neighborhood in the city, very different from the world his daughter had been born into. But that didn't matter. The resemblance was too striking to ignore. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. For the rest of the day, Richard couldn't focus on anything. He kept watching Natalie work, noticing every detail. The way she held tools, how she interacted with co-workers, even how she laughed, it all reminded him of Emily. More than that, it reminded him of himself at her age. At the end of the workday, Richard approached Mike, the foreman of the construction site, a 50-year-old man who had known all the workers for a long time. "Mike, that new worker, Natalie, how long has she been working here?" "Natalie? She's not new, boss. She's been in construction for about 5 years, one of the best we've got. Why do you ask?" "Do you know anything about her family?" Mike scratched his head, thoughtful. "I know she lives with her grandmother in a small house in Hope Heights. The old lady hasn't been feeling well lately. Natalie's a hard worker, never causes trouble. But can I ask why the interest?" Richard didn't know how to respond. How could he explain that he believed this worker might be his long-lost daughter? It would sound crazy. "Just curious," he lied. "She seems familiar." "Oh yeah, Natalie's got that good family look. Reminds me of my niece too," Mike laughed. "But I can vouch for her. She's straight as an arrow. Works hard to support her grandmother and even studies at night." This information left Richard even more intrigued. Emily had always been a studious child, passionate about books. Learning that Natalie studied struck a chord in his heart. That night, Richard couldn't sleep. He kept staring at old photos of Emily, comparing every feature to his memories of Natalie. The more he thought, the more convinced he became that it wasn't just a resemblance. The next morning, he arrived at the site earlier than usual. He wanted to watch Natalie arrive, to study her every gesture. When he saw her step off the bus, hurrying so she wouldn't be late, Richard felt a sharp pang in his chest. How many mornings had his daughter endured this tough routine while he lived comfortably, unaware of where she was? Over the week, Richard made excuses to visit the site every day. He claimed he was checking progress, but in truth, he was observing Natalie. She began to notice the boss's constant presence, and it made her nervous. "What did I do?" Natalie asked Mike one Friday morning. "The boss won't stop staring at me. Am I doing something wrong?" "Relax, girl. If it was something bad, he'd have called you out already. Maybe he's impressed with your work." But Natalie wasn't comfortable. The boss's eyes seemed to search for something in her, as if trying to solve a puzzle, and it unsettled her deeply. Richard, meanwhile, was torn between the need to uncover the truth and the fear of being wrong. What if it was just a cruel twist of fate? What if he was seeing things that weren't there? Then he decided to take a more direct approach. The following Monday, he approached Natalie during break. "Natalie, can I talk to you?" She sighed, clearly reluctant. "If it's about work, fine." "Actually, I'd like to make you an offer." Natalie raised an eyebrow, suspicious. "What kind of offer?" Richard took a deep breath. It was now or never. "I'd like to triple your salary." Natalie's eyes widened. "Triple? Why? What do you want in return?" "Just that you take a simple test, a DNA test." Natalie's expression hardened instantly. "A DNA test? For what?" Richard hesitated. How could he explain without sounding completely insane? "I lost my daughter 15 years ago. She was taken by her mother after our divorce, and I never saw her again. You look just like her." Natalie took a step back, clearly offended. "Are you out of your mind? I know exactly who I am and where I come from. My grandmother raised me since I was little. I don't need any test to prove who I am." "Please, Natalie. I know it might seem strange, but..." "Strange? It's insulting," Natalie cut in, her voice rising. "You think I'm some kind of imposter? That I'm lying about my own life?" Richard panicked when he saw her reaction. "That's not it. It's just that the resemblance is too striking to be a coincidence." "Resemblance? You want to know something? There are plenty of people who look alike in the world. That doesn't mean anything." Natalie was visibly irritated. "And another thing, I'm proud of my life, even if it's humble. I don't need anyone's charity." With that, Natalie quickly walked away, leaving Richard alone and even more confused. Maybe he had been too hasty. Maybe he should have thought more carefully about how to approach the situation. But even with the rejection, Richard couldn't give up. The resemblance was too strong, and Natalie's proud reaction only reminded him more of young Emily, who had always been stubborn and determined. That afternoon, Richard made a decision that would change everything. He called Scott Parker, the best private investigator he knew. "Scott, I need your services again." "Richard, I thought you'd given up on searching for your daughter." "I never gave up, and now I might have a lead. I need you to look into someone." Richard passed on all the information he had about Natalie, her full name, address, workplace, and especially the story about living with her grandmother since she was little. "Got it," Scott said. "I'll investigate discreetly. But Richard, you've had so many hopes dashed before. Are you sure you want to reopen this wound?" "I am. This time is different, Scott. There's something about this girl that tells me it's not just a coincidence." Meanwhile, Natalie arrived home still upset about the conversation at the construction site. She lived in a modest two-bedroom house in Hope Heights with her grandmother Ruth, a 75-year-old woman who suffered from diabetes and heart problems. "What's wrong, dear? You came home looking upset," Ruth observed, sitting in the living room armchair watching her soap opera. "Oh, Grandma, just a problem at work. The boss has been acting strange around me." "Strange how?" Natalie hesitated. She didn't want to worry her grandmother, whose health was already fragile. Nothing serious, Grandma. Just some weird questions. Ruth studied her granddaughter carefully. She had known Natalie since she came into her life as a baby, just a few months old, and she could always tell when something was deeply bothering her. "Sit here with me, dear. Tell me what really happened." Natalie settled on the couch beside her grandmother and told her about Richard's strange questions and the DNA test proposal. When Ruth heard about the test, she visibly paled. Her hands began to tremble, and she pressed one to her chest. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm fine, dear," Ruth answered quickly, but her voice sounded off. "It's just my heart acting up sometimes. That boss of yours must really be a strange man. Best not to pay attention to that nonsense." But Natalie noticed her grandmother was more agitated than usual. During dinner, Ruth barely touched her food and seemed lost in distant thoughts. "Grandma, are you sure you're all right?" "Of course, my dear. I'm just a little tired." That night, Natalie tried to study for her business administration exams. She attended night classes, but she couldn't focus. Richard's words echoed in her mind. Why was he so interested in a DNA test? What was the real story behind his sudden interest? Later, when she thought Natalie was asleep, Ruth got out of bed and went to the bedroom closet. With trembling hands, she pulled out an old box hidden deep behind other belongings. Inside were old photos, yellow documents, and a few letters. Ruth picked up one photo in particular and studied it in the dim lamplight. It was a picture of a young, elegant woman with dark hair and brown eyes. A woman who looked remarkably like Natalie. "Catherine," whispered Ruth, tears in her eyes. "Did I do the right thing? How could I have known this would come back to haunt us one day?" She stared at the photo for several minutes, battling memories she'd tried to bury over 20 years ago. Then she put everything away again and returned to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers tremendously. Now, continuing. The next morning, Scott Parker began his investigation. He had discreet methods for uncovering information without raising suspicion. First, he went to the local records office to check birth certificates and other official documents for Natalie. What he found was curious. Natalie Wilson's birth record was correct, showing she'd been born at the local hospital 23 years ago. Ruth Wilson was listed as her grandmother and legal guardian, but there was no information about the parents. This was strange. Normally, even in abandonment cases, there'd be some record of the biological parents, even if incomplete. Scott decided to investigate Ruth Wilson's background. He discovered she'd worked as a housemaid for many years in wealthy homes around the area. Between 1999 and 2008, she'd worked for several families, but there were no specific records. Meanwhile, at the construction site, Richard couldn't stop watching Natalie. With each passing day, more details caught his attention. The way she held her pencil to jot down measurements was exactly how Emily used to hold her crayons when drawing. The way she bit her lower lip when concentrating was identical too. Natalie, for her part, began noticing it wasn't just Richard observing her. There was a strange man who occasionally appeared near the site, pretending to be a passerby, but clearly interested in her. This made her even more uncomfortable. On Thursday, Natalie decided to confront the situation. She approached Richard during lunch break. "Mr. Richard, may I speak with you?" Richard startled. It was the first time she'd initiated conversation. "Of course, Natalie. What is it?" "I want to know why a man is following me. I know it has to do with you." Richard sighed. There was no point denying it. "He's an investigator. I asked him to learn more about your family." "What do you mean?" Natalie asked, indignant. "You have no right to investigate my life." "I know I don't, but Natalie, please try to understand. I lost my daughter when she was 8. The divorce was terrible. My ex-wife disappeared with her, and I never heard from them again. That was 15 years ago, and not a day has passed when I haven't thought of her." Richard's voice cracked as he spoke about his daughter. Natalie could see genuine pain in his eyes. "When I saw you that morning carrying cement bags, it felt like my heart stopped. You're identical to her, not just physically, but in your mannerisms, expressions, even how you speak." Natalie felt something strange in her chest hearing those words, a sensation she couldn't explain. But that doesn't mean anything, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Millions of people look alike in the world. You're right. But what if it's not just resemblance? What if you're truly my daughter? Wouldn't you want to know the truth? Natalie fell silent for several seconds. Until now, her life had been simple and well-defined. She was Natalie Wilson, daughter of unknown parents, raised by her grandmother Ruth since infancy. But Richard was planting a seed of doubt that unsettled her. Why would your ex-wife have done this? Why would she hide your daughter? I don't know, Richard admitted. Catherine has always been a complicated person. Our separation was very difficult. She said she would make sure I never saw Emily again, but I thought it was just anger in the heat of the moment. I never imagined she would actually do it. And what if I took this test and wasn't your daughter? Would you leave me alone? Yes, Richard promised. Richard, if the test comes back negative, I'd never bother you again. But if it's positive, what would happen? Richard thought about his answer. What would really happen? How would he rebuild a relationship with a daughter who had grown up in a world completely different from his? I just want you back in my life, he answered honestly. Not to change who you are or how you live, just to have the chance to know the woman my daughter has become. Natalie felt her eyes well up. There was a sincerity in Richard's voice that moved her deeply. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to have a father. Ruth had always been wonderful, but Natalie couldn't deny that sometimes she felt a void when she saw friends with their fathers. I need time to think, she finally said. How much time do you need? I don't know. It's a lot to process. Richard nodded understandingly. Take all the time you need. But Natalie, please don't tell anyone about this yet. If you really are my daughter, there are people who might not want the truth to come out. That statement left Natalie even more confused. What people? Why wouldn't someone want the truth to be known? That afternoon, Natalie returned home more pensive than usual. She found Ruth in the kitchen preparing dinner, but her grandmother seemed uneasy. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course, dear. Are you sure about everything you've told me about my parents? Ruth dropped the spoon she was holding. The sound echoed through the quiet kitchen. Why do you ask, Natalie? It's just... Sometimes I have strange feelings, like there are gaps in my childhood memories. Ruth visibly tensed. What kind of gaps? I can't explain it. It's like some memories don't quite fit, and lately, with everything happening at the construction site, I've been thinking about it a lot. What's happening at the construction site? Natalie hesitated. Should she tell her grandmother about Richard and his suspicions? My boss thinks I look like someone he used to know. Oh? And who would that be? His daughter, who he lost many years ago. Ruth paled even further and steadied herself against the kitchen counter. Grandma, are you okay? I'm fine, dear. It's just my heart acting up again. Your boss's nonsense isn't worth your attention. You know exactly who you are. But Natalie noticed her grandmother's hands trembling more than usual, and her breathing was uneven. Grandma, I'm taking you to the doctor. No need, dear. I'm feeling better already. But during dinner, Ruth barely touched her food. She kept looking at Natalie with an expression that mixed love and sadness, as if she were carrying a secret, too heavy to bear alone. That night, Natalie couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the strange conversations of the past few days. Why did her grandmother get nervous every time the construction site was mentioned? Why was Richard so convinced she could be his daughter? Around 2 in the morning, Natalie heard noises coming from her grandmother's room. It sounded like Ruth was talking to herself. Natalie got up quietly and approached the slightly open door. Forgive me, Catherine, Ruth murmured. I promised I'd take care of her, but I don't know how much longer I can keep this secret. She's growing up and asking questions. What should I do? Natalie's heart raced. Who was Catherine? Why was her grandmother asking for forgiveness? And what secret was this? She slipped back to her room in silence but couldn't fall asleep again. Catherine, the name echoed in her mind. There was something familiar about him, like a distant song you can almost remember but not quite. The next morning, Natalie arrived at the construction site with a decision made. She looked for Richard as soon as she saw him. Mr. Richard, I've decided to take the test. Richard turned quickly, surprised. Are you sure? I am, but with a few conditions. What are they? First, I want to choose the lab. Second, I want the results given to me first. And third, no matter the outcome, I want you to tell me the whole truth about your ex-wife and what happened 15 years ago. Richard agreed immediately. Perfect. We can go today if you'd like. Let's go. But I should warn you I'll be late for work. Don't worry about that, Mike will understand. The lab Natalie had chosen was in the city center. During the car ride, they talked more about their lives. Richard told her about his construction company, how he'd built it from scratch after graduating with an engineering degree. Natalie spoke about her studies, her dreams of one day owning her own company, and how her grandmother had made sacrifices so she could get an education. Your grandmother sounds like a very special person, Richard remarked. She is. She sacrificed her whole life for me. That's why it's so hard to question the things she's told me. I don't want to hurt her. I understand, but sometimes the truth can be freeing, even if it's painful at first. At the lab, the process was quick and simple. A nurse collected saliva samples from both of them and explained the results would be ready in 5 business days. The whole time, Natalie felt nervous but also relieved. Finally, she would know the truth. What now? Natalie asked as they left the lab. Now we wait, Richard replied. But Natalie, can I ask you something? What? I'd like to meet your grandmother. If you really are my daughter, she's the one who raised you all these years. I'd like to thank her in person. Natalie hesitated. Ruth had been very unsettled lately. Would introducing her to Richard be a good idea? I'll think about it. Grandma's been a bit fragile recently. I understand. I won't push. When Natalie got home that afternoon, she found Ruth more agitated than ever. Her grandmother was pacing back and forth in the living room as if bracing for bad news. Grandma, is something wrong? No, dear. It's just... Ruth hesitated. You were later than usual today. Natalie decided it was time to be honest. Grandma, I took a DNA test today. The effect of those words on Ruth was immediate. She sank heavily into her armchair, pressing a hand to her chest. A DNA test? For what? To find out if my boss at the construction site is really my father. Ruth closed her eyes and stayed silent for several minutes. When she opened them again, they were filled with tears. Natalie, dear, sit here with me. I think it's time you learned a few things. A chill ran through Natalie's stomach. From her grandmother's expression, she knew her life was about to change forever. What things, Grandma? About how you really came to me. Ruth took a deep breath and began a story she'd kept in her heart for over 20 years. She told how in 2001, she'd worked as a housekeeper for a wealthy family. The lady of the house was going through a very difficult divorce and had a little girl, 8 years old. Her name was Catherine, Ruth said, watching Natalie's reaction. Catherine Coleman. Natalie felt the world spin around her. Coleman was Richard's last name. Go on, Grandma. Catherine was desperate. She said her ex-husband would try to take her daughter away, that he had money and influence. She wanted to disappear with the girl, but she was pregnant with another man's child and afraid she couldn't raise 2 children alone. Pregnant with another man's child? Yes. She was having an affair during the marriage. When her husband found out, he wanted a divorce. But Catherine also discovered she was pregnant with her lover's child. Natalie was starting to understand the story, but she still couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's when she made me an offer, Ruth continued. She would give me money to raise her daughter as if she were my granddaughter, while she ran away with the baby she was expecting and the child's father. But that's terrible, I know. But Natalie, back then, I was struggling financially. My husband had passed away, I didn't have a steady job, and Catherine offered me enough money to buy this house and raise you with dignity. Natalie felt like she couldn't breathe. Had her whole life been a lie? What happened to Catherine and the baby? She disappeared. She left you with me when you were 8 and never contacted me again. I didn't even know where she'd gone. But my birth certificate, it was forged. Catherine had connections who arranged it. She changed your name from Emily to Natalie and created a new identity for you. Natalie felt like she was living a nightmare. Emily. The name echoed in her mind, something familiar yet distant. So Richard really is my father? Yes, dear. He's your biological father. And I always knew this day would come. I knew you'd grow up and ask questions I couldn't avoid forever. Natalie began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of confusion and emotional overload. Her entire life had turned into a lie in just a few minutes. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why keep this secret for so long? Because I was afraid, Ruth admitted, also crying. Afraid you'd hate me for being part of this lie. Afraid your father would come and take you away. Afraid of losing the only family I had left. Natalie stood up and walked to the window, trying to process everything she'd just learned. Outside, life went on as usual. People walked down the street, children played, cars drove by. But for her, nothing would ever be normal again. Natalie, Ruth called softly. Do you hate me? Natalie turned to look at the woman who had raised her with so much love and dedication. Despite the lie, despite everything, she knew Ruth had been the best mother she could have had. No, Grandma. I don't hate you. You did what you thought was right at the time, and you gave me a life full of love. But what now? What happens now? I don't know, Natalie answered honestly. I need to meet my father. I need to hear his side of the story. And I need to find out where Catherine is. Will you leave me? Natalie moved closer to Ruth and hugged her. Never. You're my grandmother in my heart, and that will never change. No matter what I learn about my past, you'll always be the most important person in my life. Ruth felt relieved but still worried. What if your father wants you to live with him? He's wealthy. He can give you opportunities I never could. Grandma, home isn't about money. It's about love. And this has always been my home. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, Natalie couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Richard, imagining how it must have been for him all these years, searching for a daughter he thought was lost forever. She pictured his pain, his frustration, his helplessness. She also thought about Catherine, the woman who was her biological mother, but had chosen to abandon her to run off with another man. Where was she now? Did she have other children? Had she ever thought about the daughter she left behind? The next morning, Natalie called Richard before even going to work. Hello, Richard, it's Natalie. Can we talk today? Of course, do you want me to stop by the construction site? Actually, I'd like you to come to my house. There are some things I need to tell you, and I think my grandmother also wants to speak with you. Richard felt his heart race. Natalie's tone was different, more serious. All right, can you give me the address? Natalie gave him the address, and they agreed to meet in the late afternoon. When she hung up, she felt nervous but also relieved. Finally, all the cards would be laid on the table. During the day at the construction site, Natalie was clearly distracted. Mike noticed and approached her. Everything okay, kid? You look off today. It's just... Natalie hesitated. Mike, can I ask you something? 15 years ago, when I showed up in town, do you remember anything strange? Mike scratched his head, thoughtful. 15 years? You were just a little kid, right? I remember your grandmother mentioned you'd moved here because of family problems. Why do you ask? I'm trying to understand some things about my past. Well, if it helps, I remember there were some rumors back then about a wealthy woman who disappeared with her daughter. They said her husband was searching everywhere, but I never knew if it was true or just gossip. Natalie felt a tightness in her chest. The rumors were true. She was the missing child. Do you remember anything else? Not much. Just that some people thought it was odd for a child to suddenly appear in town without a clear explanation, but your grandmother was always well respected, so no one questioned it too much. This made Natalie realize there were likely others in town who'd suspected something but had respected Ruth's privacy. By late afternoon, Richard arrived at the house in Hope Heights. It was a world apart from his own, but there was a sense of home that touched him deeply. The house was simple but well kept, with a small garden out front where Ruth grew some flowers. When Natalie opened the door, Richard could see tears in her eyes. "Come in," she said softly. In the living room, Ruth sat in her armchair, visibly nervous. When she saw Richard, she rose with difficulty. "You must be Richard," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes, and you must be Ruth. It's a pleasure." They sat down, and a heavy silence hung in the air for a moment. Natalie broke the ice. "Richard, my grandmother told me the whole truth last night." Richard looked from Ruth to Natalie, trying to understand. "What truth?" "About Catherine. About how I ended up here. About everything." Natalie then told Richard the entire story Ruth had revealed the night before. She watched as his face shifted through expressions: surprise, anger, sadness, relief. When she finished, Richard stayed silent for a few minutes, processing it all. "So you always knew," he finally said, looking at Ruth. "Yes," Ruth replied, lowering her head. "And I know I have no excuse for what I did. But that little girl needed a home and I needed a purpose in life. And Catherine, do you know where she is?" "No. After she left, I never heard from her again. She said she was going far away and that I should never look for her." Richard felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was furious at Catherine for what she'd done to her daughter. On the other, he was grateful to Ruth for raising Emily, Natalie, with so much love. "Mrs. Wilson," he said after a while, "I know the situation was complicated and you did what you thought was best at the time. I can't say I agree with the lies, but I see Natalie has become an amazing person. And that was only possible because of your care." Ruth began to cry. "You're not angry with me?" "I'm angry at the situation. I'm angry at Catherine, but not at you. You saved my daughter from a life that could have been much worse." Natalie felt moved, seeing the two adults she loved most, speaking with such mutual respect. "What about the DNA test?" Richard asked. "Are we still waiting for the results?" "I don't think we need to anymore," Natalie replied. "Grandma's story confirms everything. But if you want official certainty..." "No, I'm already sure. From the first day I saw you, I knew in my heart you were my daughter." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking. Richard told her about his life over the past 15 years, how he had searched tirelessly for Natalie, the detectives he'd hired, the false leads he'd followed. Natalie shared about her childhood school and her dreams of one day having her own business. Richard was moved to hear his daughter had inherited his interest in entrepreneurship. "You know," Richard said at one point, "I kept all your birthday gifts. Every year on your birthday, I bought something with you in mind. They're all stored in my office." Natalie was speechless. The thought that her father had remembered her all those years, even buying gifts he could never give, touched her deeply. "I'd like to see them," she said, "whenever you want. My home is always open to you." "Your home?" Natalie asked. "Do you have a family, a wife, other children?" "No," Richard answered sadly. "After you disappeared, I could never commit to anyone. I always hoped you'd come back one day, and it wouldn't have been fair to someone else." Natalie's heart ached, realizing her father had sacrificed his personal life for her. As Richard prepared to leave, Ruth called to him. "Richard, may I ask a favor?" "Of course. I know now you and Natalie will want to get to know each other, to build a relationship. I just ask that I can still be part of her life. She's all I have." Richard took Ruth's hands. "Mrs. Wilson, you're not losing a granddaughter. You're gaining a family. If Natalie agrees, I'd like you to be like a mother to me too. After all, you raised my daughter when I couldn't." Ruth couldn't hold back her tears. It was more than she could have hoped for. In the following days, Natalie and Richard grew closer. They had lunch together a few times a week, and Richard shared stories about Natalie's childhood she didn't remember. Slowly, buried memories resurfaced. Natalie recalled the big house she'd lived in as a child, the garden with a swing where she loved to play, even a dog named Max, who had been her best friend. "What happened to Max?" she asked during one lunch. Richard looked sad. "He searched for me for days after you disappeared. It was like he knew something was wrong. He grew depressed, stopped eating. I had to give him to a family with children, hoping he'd be happy again. Natalie was moved, imagining the dog looking for her. Do you think he's still alive? Probably not. It's been 15 years. But if you want, we can try to find out what happened to him. During this time of reconnection, Richard also met Natalie's boyfriend, Daniel, a mechanic who had initially been suspicious of the wealthy businessman's intentions. But gradually, seeing Richard's sincerity and Natalie's happiness, Daniel began to accept the situation. At first, I thought it might be some kind of scam, Daniel admitted to Richard during a conversation. A rich guy wanting to give money to my girlfriend? It sounded like something out of a movie. I understand your suspicion, Richard replied. But Daniel, I want you to know that my intention was never to change Natalie's life. I just want to be part of it. And I respect that. I just ask that you don't try to change who she is. Natalie is an incredible person exactly the way she is. I completely agree. But not everything was settled. Richard was determined to find Catherine and understand why she had done what she did. He hired Scott again to investigate his ex-wife's whereabouts. Do you think she's still alive? Natalie asked when Richard told her about the new investigation. I don't know, but I need answers. And aren't you curious about your birth mother? Natalie thought about the question. It was a complicated situation. On one hand, Catherine was her birth mother. On the other, she had abandoned Natalie and built an entire life based on lies. I am curious, yes, but I'm also afraid. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if she has a new life and my existence only causes problems? Those are valid fears, Richard admitted. But Natalie, don't you think you deserve to know why your own mother abandoned you? That question echoed in Natalie's mind for days. Ruth, sensing her granddaughter's inner conflict, decided to share a few more details she had kept to herself. Sweetheart, there's something I never told you about Catherine. What, Grandma? In the last days before she left, she cried a lot. She didn't seem happy with the decision she was making. It was like she was being forced to choose between you and the baby she was expecting. What do you mean? The man she was running away with didn't want to raise you together. He told her to choose, either take you and he wouldn't go with her, or leave you behind, and they'd start a new family. Natalie felt a sharp pain hearing this. Knowing her mother had been forced to choose between her and a new life didn't lessen the pain of abandonment, but at least it explained part of the situation. And she chose him, Natalie said bitterly. Yes, but sweetheart, in those last days, she spent hours watching you sleep. It was like she was trying to memorize every detail of your face. This information left Natalie even more confused about her feelings toward Catherine. On one hand, she felt anger for being abandoned. On the other, she began to understand that maybe Catherine had also suffered because of that decision. 2 weeks later, Scott called Richard with news. Richard, I found Catherine. Where is she? In Boston. She goes by Catherine Johnson now. She married the man she ran away with, and they have a 14-year-old son. Richard felt his heart race. After 15 years, he finally knew where to find the woman who had destroyed his family. Did you talk to her? No, I just confirmed her identity and address. What do you want to do? Richard thought for a moment. His first reaction was anger. He wanted to confront Catherine immediately, but then he thought of Natalie and how this discovery would affect her. I'll talk to Natalie first. This decision has to be hers too. When Richard told Natalie about the discovery, she was silent for a long time. So she really did start over. She has a new family. Yes, a husband and a 14-year-old son. Natalie imagined Catherine raising another child, while she grew up believing she had no mother. The pain of rejection came back full force. What do you want to do? Richard asked. I want to talk to her, Natalie said firmly. I want to hear from her own lips why she abandoned me. Are you sure? It could be a very painful conversation. I'm sure. I need this conversation to move forward. Richard agreed, but insisted on going with her. They planned to travel to Boston the following weekend. Ruth was worried about the trip. What if she's cruel to you, my dear? What if she says things that will break your heart? Then at least I'll know the truth, Grandma. I can't spend the rest of my life with these questions in my head. Daniel also offered to go with Natalie, but she preferred it to be just her and Richard. "This is something I need to handle as a family," she explained. The drive to Boston was quiet. Natalie was nervous, rehearsing in her mind what she would say to Catherine. Richard was torn between protecting his daughter and his own need to confront his ex-wife. Catherine lived in an upper-middle-class home, a far cry from the modest house where Natalie had grown up. When they rang the doorbell, a woman around 45 answered. When Catherine saw Richard, she paled. When her eyes turned to Natalie, she covered her mouth, clearly in shock. "My God," she whispered. "Emily?" "My name is Natalie now," Natalie replied, trying to keep her voice steady. For a few seconds, the three of them stood frozen at the door, unsure of what to say. Catherine was the one who broke the silence. "Come in, please." The house was comfortable and well decorated. Natalie noticed family photos on the wall, including several of a teenager who was clearly Catherine's son. There were none of her. "Have a seat," Catherine said, gesturing to the sofa. "Would you like something to drink?" "We're not here for a social visit," Richard said coldly. "We came for answers." Catherine sat in an armchair across from them, visibly nervous. "How did you find me?" "That doesn't matter," Natalie interrupted. "What matters is why you abandoned me." Catherine began to cry. "Emily, Natalie, you don't know how hard it is for me to see you here. All these years, All these years? You what?" Natalie cut in again. "Thought about me? Missed me? Because I grew up believing my parents didn't want me." "That's not true. I always loved you. Your father loved you. The situation was just impossible." "What situation?" Richard asked. "The situation where you were cheating on our marriage." Catherine composed herself slightly and began telling her side of the story. She admitted she had cheated on Richard, but said their marriage had been broken for years. She spoke of how she had fallen in love with another man and gotten pregnant by him. When Richard found out about the affair, he said he would seek full custody of Emily and that I'd never see my daughter again, Catherine explained. "That's not true," Richard protested. "I never said that." "Yes, you did. You were furious. You said I was a terrible mother and didn't deserve Emily." Natalie watched the argument between her birth parents, trying to piece together what had really happened 15 years ago. "Even if that were true," Natalie said, "why didn't you fight for me? Why did you just disappear?" "Because Robert said he couldn't raise another man's child alongside our baby. He told me to choose, either keep you and he'd leave, or leave you with someone who could care for you properly. And you chose him," Natalie concluded bitterly. "I was pregnant, Emily. I was alone, with no money, no place to live. Robert offered security for me and the baby on the way." "But what about me? Didn't I deserve security too?" Catherine couldn't answer that. The silence that followed was deafening. Just then, a teenager walked into the room. He was a tall boy with dark hair, clearly Catherine's son. "Mom, who are these people?" he asked. Catherine grew even more flustered. "Michael, go to your room. It's just a quick visit." But Michael noticed the tension and looked curiously at Natalie. "She looks like you, Mom," he observed innocently. Natalie felt a sharp pang at his words. So she really did look like Catherine. It was one more confirmation that they were family, even if Catherine had chosen not to acknowledge it. "Michael, please go to your room," Catherine insisted. After the boy left, the conversation continued, but now it carried a different weight. Natalie had seen with her own eyes the son Catherine had chosen to raise in her place. "Does he know about me?" Natalie asked. "No," Catherine admitted. "Robert thought it best not to tell him. He said it would be confusing for Michael to learn he had an older sister." "So you hid my existence from your new family?" "It wasn't exactly like that." "It was exactly like that," Natalie snapped. "You erased me from your life completely." Richard watched his daughter confront Catherine and felt proud of her courage, even amid the pain he knew she was feeling. "Natalie," Catherine tried to reach for her, "you have to understand. It was a very difficult time in my life. I was young, I was confused." "Don't touch me," Natalie stepped back. "You had 15 years to look for me, 15 years to try to explain your decision. But you chose to pretend I didn't exist." "That's not true." I think about you every day. If you really did, you would have looked for me." At that moment, a man entered the house. It was Robert, Catherine's husband. He was tall, well-dressed, clearly financially successful. "Catherine, what's going on here?" he asked, taking in the scene. "Robert," Catherine stood up nervously, "I'm the daughter your wife abandoned 15 years ago," Natalie said bluntly. Robert looked from Catherine to Natalie, clearly shocked. "Emily?" he asked. "So you do remember me," Natalie said sarcastically. "Good to know at least someone remembers the child you both decided to leave behind." Robert shifted uncomfortably. "Look, it was a complicated situation. We were young. We didn't know how to handle everything." "Complicated?" Richard cut in. "You tore a family apart and traumatized a child. That's not complicated. It's cruel." The argument grew tenser, and Natalie realized she wasn't getting the answers she'd hoped for. Catherine and Robert were more focused on justifying themselves than acknowledging the harm they'd done. "Enough," Natalie said, standing up. "I came here hoping for an explanation that might bring me peace. But you're exactly the selfish people I imagined." "Natalie, wait!" Catherine tried to stop her. "Don't leave like this. Now that we've found each other, we can try to..." "Try what?" Natalie turned to her. "Be a happy family? You made your choice 15 years ago. I grew up knowing you didn't want me. Ruth gave me all the love you denied me, and Richard searched for me tirelessly while you built a new life pretending I didn't exist. But now we can start over. No, I don't need your belated guilt. I have a family who truly loves me." With that, Natalie walked out of the house, followed by Richard. Catherine stood in the doorway crying, but couldn't bring herself to follow them. In the car on the way back, Natalie finally let out all the tears she'd held back during the confrontation. "Are you okay?" Richard asked, concerned. "I am. It hurt, but it was necessary. Now I know what kind of person she is and I can move forward without wondering what if. You were very brave back there. I learned from Grandma that sometimes courage is all we have left." Richard smiled, hearing Natalie speak of Ruth with such affection. "And now? What do you want to do?" "I want to go home. I want to hug my grandmother and tell her that despite everything, she was the best mother I could have had." When they arrived home, Ruth was waiting anxiously. "How did it go, sweetheart?" Natalie hugged her grandmother tightly. "It was painful, but it brought clarity. And it made me realize something very important." "What?" "That you're my real mother. Catherine may have given birth to me, but you raised me, loved me, and taught me values. You're my true family." Ruth wept with emotion upon hearing those words. "And Richard?" she asked. "He's your family now too?" Natalie looked at her father and smiled. "Yes. Now I have a complete family, a father who searched for me tirelessly, and a mother who raised me with all the love in the world." In the weeks that followed, Natalie's life settled down. She continued working at the construction site, but now with a different perspective. Richard had offered several times for her to work at his company in an executive role, but Natalie didn't feel ready for that change. "It's not out of distrust," she explained. "I want to earn things on my own merit. If I ever work at your company, I want it to be because I deserve it, not because I'm your daughter." Richard respected her decision, but couldn't hide his pride in his daughter's integrity. During this time, they began building traditions together. Sunday lunches at Ruth's house became sacred. Richard always arrived with gifts for both women, and Ruth cooked his favorite dishes. "You know," Richard said during one of these lunches, "I never thought I'd have a family again. After you disappeared, I convinced myself I was destined to be alone. And now," Natalie asked, "now I realize family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, love, and being there for the moments that matter." Ruth was moved by his words. "Richard, can I tell you something?" "Of course. I feel guilty for taking those 15 years from both of you. I know I can't give back that lost time." "Mrs. Wilson," Richard held her hand, "you didn't take anything from us. You saved my daughter. If it weren't for you, I don't know what would have happened to Natalie. You gave me the greatest gift of my life, a strong, honest, hard-working daughter full of love in her heart. But what about those years you missed together? Those years weren't lost, Natalie interrupted. They made me who I am today, and now we have the rest of our lives to build our relationship. Richard agreed. Exactly. The past can't be changed, but the future is in our hands. A few months later, Natalie made a decision that surprised everyone. She decided to accept Richard's offer to work at his company, but with one condition. I accept, but I don't want special treatment. I want to start as an intern and work my way up on merit. Natalie, you already have experience. You don't need to start as an intern. Yes, I do. I want to learn the business from the ground up, understand every aspect of the company. If I'm ever going to take on bigger responsibilities, I want to be prepared. Richard was impressed by his daughter's maturity. All right, but on one condition. You'll study business administration at night at a private university. I'll pay for it. Dad, I'm already studying business. I know, but at a private university, you'll have more opportunities, better professors. It's an investment in your future. Natalie agreed, but insisted on signing a loan agreement to pay back the tuition when she could. Natalie's first day at the company was emotional. Richard introduced her to the employees as his daughter, a new intern. Some were surprised to learn their boss had an unknown daughter, but they quickly welcomed Natalie to the team. Natalie worked hard to prove she belonged. She arrived early, stayed late, asked smart questions, and always volunteered for extra projects. In no time, she earned her colleagues' respect. Daniel at first felt a bit uneasy about the changes in Natalie's life. "Are you sure you want to stay with me?" he asked one night. "Now you're part of a different world. You could meet people more suited to your new status." Natalie got angry at the question. "Daniel, my status hasn't changed. I'm still the same person. Finding my father doesn't change who I am inside. But now you have money, opportunities. So what? Does that change how I feel about you?" Daniel realized he was being unnecessarily insecure. "No, I'm sorry. It's just that sometimes I'm afraid of losing you. The only way you'll lose me is by doubting my love for you." This conversation strengthened their relationship even more. Daniel began supporting Natalie in her new professional ventures, and she always made sure to include him in her new life. A year after finding Richard, Natalie received an unexpected call. It was Michael, the half-brother she'd met at Catherine's house. "Natalie, it's Michael. I got your number from a friend who works at your company." Natalie was surprised. "Michael, how are you?" "Confused," he admitted. "Ever since you came to our house, my mum's been acting strange, and I found out some things I'd like to talk to you about." "What kind of things?" "I can't say over the phone. Could we meet?" "I'm here in New York City for a school soccer tournament." Natalie agreed to meet him at a mall the following Saturday. She was curious about what Michael had discovered. When they met, Natalie was struck by how much Michael had grown. He was 15 now, a bright, articulate teenager. "Natalie, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Is it true you're my sister?" Natalie was taken aback by the directness of the question. "Half-sister, technically. Why?" "Because after you left, I kept pressing my mum until she told me the truth. She said she had a daughter before me, but had to give the child to someone else." "And how do you feel about that?" "I'm furious. How could she have a daughter and never tell me? And worse, how could she abandon her own child?" Natalie studied her younger brother and saw anger and confusion in his eyes. "Michael, these are complicated adult matters. Your mom was in a tough situation back then." "That's no excuse," Michael said firmly. "Nothing justifies a mother abandoning her child. And you know what makes me angriest? She raised me saying family is the most important thing in the world, yet she destroyed one." Natalie was moved by her brother's outrage. "Did you tell your dad about our conversation?" "I did. He got mad at me for pressuring my mom, but I said I deserved the truth. I have a sister. How could they hide that from me?" "And now? What do you want?" "I want to know you. I want to be part of your life if you'll let me. I know my parents did terrible things, but that's not my fault." Natalie smiled. Michael was right. He wasn't responsible for his parents' choices. "Michael, I'd love to have you as a brother, but this might cause problems at home. It already has. My parents fight every day now. My mom cries in secret, and my dad's mad at me for digging up the past, but I don't regret it. I'd rather live with the truth than with lies. Are you sure? Once you know the whole truth, there's no going back. I'm sure. Tell me what really happened. Natalie then shared the whole story with Michael, their parents' divorce, Catherine's disappearance, the years living with Ruth, and reuniting with Richard. Michael listened quietly, sometimes shaking his head in disapproval. So our mum chose my dad over you, he concluded. Yes, but Michael, I don't want you to resent her because of me. She's your mother. She raised you with love. She raised me on lies. How can I trust someone like that? Natalie saw that Michael was going through the same turmoil she had faced months before. Look, Michael, I understand your anger. I was furious too when I found out everything, but over time I realized holding on to anger only hurts us. Your mother made a mistake, but that doesn't erase the love she has for you. And you? Were you able to forgive her? I don't know if I've completely forgiven her, but I managed to move forward. I discovered I have an amazing family. My father, Richard, and my grandmother, Ruth. And now I have you too, if you want. Michael smiled for the first time in the conversation. I do. Very much. Then you'll have to meet the rest of the family. Richard is your stepfather too, technically. What's he like? Incredible. He searched for me for 15 years, never gave up on finding me. He's the kind of father everyone deserves. Do you think he'll accept me? I'm sure of it. Richard has a huge heart. He'll love meeting you. From that day on, Michael became part of Natalie's life. He came to New York City whenever he could, and Natalie introduced him to Richard and Ruth. Both welcomed the boy with open arms. Another grandson for me, Ruth joked. My house is getting full. Richard also grew fond of Michael quickly. He reminds me so much of you at that age, Richard told Natalie. Curious, determined, and with a strong sense of justice. Michael's presence brought a new and positive dynamic to the family. He loved listening to Richard talk about business and always asked smart questions. Richard began including him in some projects, teaching him about construction. Who knows, maybe the two of you will work together someday, Richard teased. But Michael's new relationship with Natalie and Richard caused more tension at home. Catherine and Robert grew increasingly uncomfortable with their son's visits to New York City. You're destroying our family, Catherine told Michael during an argument. I'm not destroying anything. I'm discovering my real family, Michael replied. Real family? We are your family. You're part of my family, but Natalie is too, and you tried to hide that from me my whole life. These arguments became frequent, and Michael began questioning whether he wanted to keep living with his parents. He even asked Natalie if he could move in with her. Michael, you're a minor. Legally, you can't make that decision alone. But what if Richard gets custody? Isn't he my stepfather? Technically, no. Richard was married to your mother, but you never lived together. It's complicated. Natalie talked to Richard about Michael's situation. What do you think we should do? I think Michael needs to try working things out with his parents first. He's too young for such drastic decisions, but at the same time I can't ignore that he's suffering. Maybe we could talk to Catherine and Robert. Would you be willing to do that? For Michael, yes. He's my brother and I want what's best for him. Richard was proud of Natalie's maturity. Then let's try. But if they won't listen, we'll have to find other solutions. They arranged a meeting with Catherine and Robert on neutral ground, a restaurant in downtown Boston. The conversation was tense from the start. You're trying to steal our son, Robert accused. No one's trying to steal anyone, Richard replied calmly. We're trying to create an environment where Michael can have a healthy relationship with all members of his family. Natalie isn't his family, Catherine protested. Of course I am, Natalie said. We're siblings, whether you accept it or not. Half siblings, Catherine corrected. The difference doesn't matter. Michael wants to know me, to know Richard. You have no right to stop that. We certainly are. We're his parents. And you're also the parents who lied to him his whole life, Natalie shot back. The argument went on for over an hour without reaching a resolution. Catherine and Robert stood firm in their position. that Michael should focus on his own family and forget about Natalie and Richard. "If you keep trying to turn our son against us, we'll take legal action," Robert threatened before leaving. After this frustrating meeting, Richard consulted a lawyer about Michael's rights. "The situation is complicated," the lawyer explained. "Michael is a minor, so legally, his parents have authority over him. But if he feels threatened or mistreated, he can petition for emancipation or state protection." "What about family visitation rights?" "That's more complex. If we can prove that preventing Michael from seeing his siblings is causing psychological harm, we might be able to get a court order for visitation." Richard decided not to pursue legal action for now, hoping the situation would resolve itself. But things got worse when Catherine and Robert forbade Michael from traveling to New York City. The teenager was furious and began openly rebelling against his parents. "They can't stop me from seeing my sister," Michael complained in a call to Natalie. "Michael, you need to be patient. They're afraid of losing you. But they will lose me if they keep this up. I'm thinking of running away." "Don't do that. Running away is never the solution. We'll find another way." Natalie discussed the situation with Richard and Ruth. It was Ruth who came up with an idea. "Why don't you invite Catherine and the boy to spend a weekend here? Sometimes people need to see with their own eyes that there's nothing to fear." "Do you think she'd come?" "It's worth a try. A mother always wants to protect her child. If she sees that you truly care about Michael's well-being, she might change her mind." Natalie liked the idea, but doubted Catherine would agree. To everyone's surprise, when Natalie called with the invitation, Catherine accepted. "But I'm only coming to see what kind of influence you're having on my son," she said. "Perfect. You'll see that our only intention is to create a positive environment for Michael." The weekend visit was tense at first. Catherine arrived clearly defensive, watching every interaction with a critical eye. But over time, she began to notice how genuinely happy Michael was. She saw Richard teaching Michael about architecture, explaining the company's projects with patience and enthusiasm. She watched Natalie and Michael joking and talking like real siblings. And she saw Ruth treating Michael like a beloved grandson. "He's happy here," Catherine admitted to Natalie in a private moment. "Yes, and not because this place is better than your home. It's because here he feels whole. He has access to his entire family. I'm afraid he'll prefer you over us." "Catherine, family isn't a competition. Michael has enough love for everyone. You're the parents who raised him. No one can take that away." "But what if he wants to live here?" "If he ever makes that choice, it'll be because you forced him to choose. But if you let him have a healthy relationship with us, he'll never need to make that choice." The conversation opened Catherine's eyes. She realized her possessive attitude was pushing Michael away, exactly what she feared most. On Sunday, before heading back to Boston, Catherine gathered everyone for a talk. "I want to apologize. I've been selfish. Michael has the right to know his whole family, and I can't stand in the way because of my own fears." "Thank you for understanding," Natalie replied, "but I want to make an agreement with you. Michael can come here once a month, but during school breaks, he stays with me and Robert, and any important decisions about his life must be discussed with us first." "That sounds fair," Richard agreed. Michael was overjoyed with the arrangement. Finally, he could have an open relationship with his entire family. In the following months, the family dynamic stabilized. Michael would come to New York City once a month and spend a few days with Natalie, Richard, and Ruth. During these visits, he learned about the family business, helped Richard with small projects, and strengthened his bond with Natalie. Natalie, in turn, was progressing quickly in the company. Her hard work and dedication didn't go unnoticed, and Richard promoted her to project supervisor. "Are you sure you're not promoting me just because I'm your daughter?" Natalie asked. "Absolutely sure. You earned this promotion on merit. All the managers agreed you're the most qualified person for the position." The promotion brought new responsibilities and challenges, but Natalie was ready. She had learned the business from the ground up and had a deep understanding of every aspect of construction. Daniel was proud of Natalie's success. "Remember when you thought I'd leave you because of the money?" Natalie teased him. "I do. And I thank my lucky stars every day that you proved me wrong." "And now? Ready to date an executive." Ready to marry an executive if she'll have me? Natalie was surprised. Daniel had never mentioned marriage before. Are you proposing to me? I am. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, whether you're a worker or a CEO. Natalie smiled and kissed Daniel. I accept, but on one condition. What's that? The ceremony will be here, at Grandma's house. Family is where you feel at home. The engagement brought new joy to the family. Richard was moved when Natalie asked him to walk her down the aisle. It would be an honor, he said, tears in his eyes. Ruth was thrilled at the thought of seeing her granddaughter marry in her own home. I've always dreamed of this day, she confessed. I'll throw the most beautiful party this house has ever seen. Michael was also excited and volunteered to help with the preparations. I want my sister to have the most beautiful wedding in the world. The following months were filled with intense planning. Natalie wanted a simple but meaningful ceremony. She made sure every detail reflected her journey, from the worker who carried bags of cement to the executive who had found her family. Richard insisted on covering all the costs, but Natalie negotiated to split the expenses. She wanted it to be a family celebration, not a gift from her wealthy father. Natalie, Richard said one evening, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? I mean, with everything that's happened, with all the changes in your life? Natalie thought about the question. You know, Dad, sometimes I wonder how things might have been if they'd turned out differently. If Catherine hadn't taken me, if you and I had grown up together. But then I look at my life now and realize every experience, good or bad, brought me here. And is here a good place? Here is perfect. I have a family who loves me, a job that fulfills me, and a man who wants to marry me. I couldn't ask for more. Richard smiled. Sometimes I think you've become a better person than you might have been if you'd grown up with me. Ruth taught you values I might not have been able to. Don't say that, you would have been a wonderful father, but what matters is we're a family now. Yes, and I won't let anything or anyone tear us apart again. The wedding was set for a Saturday afternoon in Ruth's garden. Richard hired decorators to transform the space into a small outdoor chapel, but Natalie insisted they maintain the simplicity and charm of the house. On the eve of the wedding, all the women in the family gathered at the house, Natalie, Ruth, and even Catherine, who had asked to participate. I know I have no right, Catherine said, but I'd like to be present at my daughter's wedding. Natalie hesitated. Her relationship with Catherine was still complicated. You can come, Natalie finally decided, but as a guest, not as the mother of the bride. That place belongs to Grandma Ruth. Catherine accepted the terms. She knew she didn't deserve more than that. On the morning of the wedding, Natalie woke up in the house where she had grown up, surrounded by the people she loved most. Ruth helped her get dressed, styled her hair, and placed an antique necklace around her neck that had belonged to her own mother. This necklace has passed through 3 generations of strong women, Ruth said. Now it's yours. Richard arrived an hour before the ceremony, looking elegant in his dark suit. When he saw Natalie in her wedding dress, he couldn't hold back his tears. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Thank you for being here, Dad. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I already lost 15 years of your life. I won't miss another important moment ever again. The ceremony was simple and moving. Daniel waited for Natalie at the makeshift altar in the garden, his eyes shining with emotion. Michael stood beside Richard, acting as the ring bearer. When it was time for Richard to walk Natalie down the aisle, he paused for a moment. Are you sure? He teased. I can still run away with you. Natalie laughed. I'm sure, Dad. Daniel is a good man. You'll love having him as your son-in-law. I already do. Any man who loves you for who you are, not for what you have, has my respect. The walk to the altar was emotional. Richard handed Natalie over to Daniel with a hug and a whisper. Take good care of her. She's my most precious treasure. You have my word, Daniel replied. I'll love her forever. The ceremony was officiated by a celebrant Richard had hired. During the vows, Natalie and Daniel spoke about their journey together, how they had faced the changes in her life and the dreams they had for the future. Daniel, Natalie said during her vows, you accepted me when I was just a worker with no known family. And you kept loving me when you found out I had a millionaire father. That proves you love me for who I am, not what I have. So I promise to love you forever, no matter what." "Natalie," Daniel replied, "you taught me that true love isn't impressed by money or status. You chose to stay with me, even when you could have had an easier life. So I promise to be the husband you deserve, every day of my life." When the celebrant declared them husband and wife, the entire family erupted in applause. Ruth cried with emotion, Richard smiled proudly, and Michael cheered with joy. The celebration lasted late into the night. Richard gave a heartfelt speech during dinner. "Natalie, when I lost you 15 years ago, I thought my life was over. Today, seeing you here, marrying the man you love, surrounded by the family who loves you, I realize it was all worth it. You've become an incredible woman, and I'm proud to be your father." Ruth also gave a speech. "Natalie, my beloved daughter, when you came into my life as a baby, I didn't know I was gaining my greatest joy. You taught me what unconditional love is. And today, seeing you start your own family, I know I did everything right." Even Catherine asked to speak. "Natalie, I know I don't deserve to be called your mother, but I want you to know that despite my mistakes, I've always loved you. And today I'm happy to see you've built a beautiful, true family." Natalie was moved by all the speeches, but it was Michael's that touched her the most. "Natalie, when I found out I had a sister, my life completely changed. You taught me that family isn't just about blood, but about choice and love. Thank you for choosing me as your brother." The party lasted until dawn. When the last guests had left, Natalie and Daniel said goodbye to the family and left for their honeymoon in the Hamptons. "It was the most perfect day of my life," Natalie told Daniel as they drove to the airport. "The first of many," Daniel replied, kissing her hand. During their honeymoon, Natalie reflected on her incredible journey. 2 years ago, she was just a laborer carrying bags of cement. Now she was a married executive with a reunited family and a bright future ahead. When they returned from their trip, Richard surprised them. He had bought an apartment for them as a wedding gift. "Dad, you didn't have to," Natalie protested. "Oh, but I did. I want you two to have the best possible start to married life." The apartment was beautiful, well located, and had 3 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms? Natalie asked curiously. "Well," Richard smiled, "I'm hoping for grandchildren." Natalie and Daniel laughed. "Slow down, Dad. We just got married." But the idea of children was already on their minds. They wanted to start a family, continuing the legacy of love they had received. In the following months, the couple settled into a happy routine. Natalie continued to grow professionally at the company, and Daniel opened his own auto repair shop with financial help from Richard. Michael kept visiting New York City every month, and his bond with the family grew stronger. He had decided to study civil engineering to follow in Richard and Natalie's footsteps. "I want to be part of the family business," he said. "I want to build the future with you." Richard was moved by his stepson's decision. "Let's build a dynasty," he joked. A year after the wedding, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. The news brought immense joy to the whole family. "I'm going to be a great-grandmother," Ruth celebrated. "I'm going to be a grandfather," Richard said, emotional. "I'm going to be an uncle," Michael shouted with joy. Natalie's pregnancy was smooth and happy. She kept working until her 7th month, always supported by Richard and her team at the company. During that time, she began thinking about the company's future and the possibility of expanding. She had innovative ideas for social housing projects, combining her experience as a laborer with her knowledge as an executive. "Dad, I'd like to propose a new project," she told Richard during a meeting. "What is it?" "A quality, affordable housing program. Simple but well-built homes for families like the one I had with Grandma." Richard was intrigued. "Go on." "We could partner with the city government, build decent homes at an affordable price, and more, we could train people from the community to work in construction, creating local jobs." "That's a brilliant idea. Let's develop this project." The social housing project became one of the company's greatest successes. They built an entire neighborhood of affordable homes, but with higher quality than usual. Natalie insisted that each house have a small garden and a shared recreational area. "I want families to be proud to live here," she explained. The project gained national recognition and earned the company several awards. Natalie was invited to give talks on social housing at universities and conferences. "You've become a leader in this field," Richard said proudly. "I learned that when you understand people's realities, you can build better solutions." When the baby arrived, the whole family was at the hospital. It was a girl named Emily Ruth, in honor of Natalie's original name and the grandmother who had raised her. "She's perfect," Ruth said, cradling her great-granddaughter in her arms. "She'll grow up knowing her whole family from day one," Natalie promised. Richard was beaming as he held his granddaughter. "She'll have everything you couldn't, a united family from the start." Michael was also enchanted by his niece. "She's going to be so spoiled," he teased. "She has 3 grandmothers, a grandfather and uncle, and parents who adore her." The arrival of Emily Ruth strengthened the family's bond even more. Catherine, who had earned a respectful place in everyone's lives, offered to help with the baby whenever she could. "I know I can't make up for lost time with Natalie," she told Richard, "but I want to cherish every moment with my granddaughter." "You're welcome here," Richard replied. "Emily will need plenty of love, and our family has more than enough to give." 2 years later, Daniel and Natalie decided to have another child. This time, it was a boy named Richard Daniel. "Now, our family is complete," Natalie said, watching their 2 children playing in Ruth's garden. "And what a family," Richard remarked. "Who would have thought we'd ever have all this?" "You would," Natalie smiled. "You never stopped believing you'd find me." "And you never stopped believing you deserved to be loved," Richard replied. That Sunday afternoon, as the whole family gathered in Ruth's garden, Natalie looked around and felt whole. Her children played with Michael, who was now in college but still a devoted brother. Daniel chatted with Richard about expanding the auto shop. Ruth, despite her age, still cared for everyone with tenderness. Even Catherine was there, participating in the family with warmth and respect. "You know," Natalie said to Daniel, "sometimes I think everything happened exactly as it was meant to." "How so?" "If Catherine hadn't taken me, I'd never have met Grandma. If Grandma hadn't raised me, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And if I weren't this person, maybe Richard and I wouldn't have built this life together." "So you don't regret anything?" "No. Every pain, every tear, every hard moment brought me here, and here is perfect." Richard walked over, carrying little Emily Ruth. "What are you 2 thinking about?" "Our journey," Natalie answered. "How a laborer carrying cement bags became this family." "You didn't become anything," Richard corrected. "You were always special. You just needed the right people to see it." "And I found them," Natalie smiled, glancing around. "A family who loves me for who I am, not what I have. A purpose that ties my life struggles to my skills, and a peace I didn't even know I was searching for." Ruth joined them, walking slowly but with a radiant smile. "Natalie, dear, can I tell you something?" "Of course, Grandma." "When you came into my life as a baby, I thought I was saving you. Now I realize it was you who saved me. You gave me purpose, taught me what real love is. Grandma, we saved each other. And now," Ruth looked at the gathered family, "you're saving another generation. Emily and Richard will grow up knowing they're loved, that they have a strong family, that they can always count on each other." Natalie took her grandmother's hand and her father's. "That's what family means. It's not perfection or never having problems. It's showing up, choosing to love even when it's hard, building something bigger than ourselves." The sun began to set over the garden in Hope Heights. The children kept playing, the adults talked quietly, and the air was filled with a sense of peace and wholeness. Richard looked at Natalie and saw not only the daughter he had lost and found again, but the strong, determined woman she had become. He also saw the devoted mother she had grown into, and the capable executive who built dreams for other families. Natalie looked at Richard and saw not just the father who had searched tirelessly for her, but the honorable man who had embraced her entire family, including the grandmother who raised her and even the ex-wife who had betrayed him. Ruth looked at them all and saw the family she had helped build with love, patience, and sacrifice. She saw that her decision to raise Natalie had been blessed in ways she could never have imagined. Daniel observed the family he had gained by loving Natalie and felt grateful to be accepted not as an outsider, but as a son. Michael, who had struggled to know his true family, felt complete knowing he belonged to something greater than himself. Even Catherine, watching from a distance the family her choices had helped shape, found a peace she hadn't felt in years. She had lost much because of her decisions, but gained the chance to share in her daughter's happiness, even if in a limited way. When evening came and everyone prepared to leave, Natalie made an announcement. "I'd like to propose something." "What?" Richard asked. "That we do this every Sunday. That we gather here, at Grandma's house, to have lunch together. I want my children to grow up knowing that Sunday is family day." "Agreed," Richard said immediately. "I'd love that," Ruth said, moved. "Perfect," Michael agreed. And so, a new tradition began. Every Sunday, the family gathered at the house in Hope Heights. The children grew up playing in the same garden where Natalie had played as a child. Richard taught his grandchildren about business, just as he was teaching Natalie. Ruth shared stories and passed down values, just as she had with Natalie. Years passed, and the family continued to grow. Michael married and had children. The company expanded to other cities. The social housing project became a national model. But the most important thing remained unchanged: the love, the mutual respect, and the certainty that family is what you build with dedication, not just what you inherit by chance. The end of the story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching tale of reunion and forgiveness. Do you believe Natalie made the right decisions throughout her journey? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like this video. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming narratives.